Hello everyone and welcome to this webinar. So this webinar will be presented by Alan Jansson. He has an online teaching platform called World Acupuncture, and he's coming here today to share with you about the root treatment. And maybe you've heard about it before, maybe not. So it's gonna go more into the basics. So this is more for people that like new students or people that are interested into learning using the website. So maybe advanced practitioners will be good for them to just revise their knowledge. I just ask everyone to mute their microphones. And if you have any questions, you can ask at the end of the talk. Okay, and then I will speak also at the end a little bit. Okay, so we'll have Alan Jansson talking in a minute.
Thanks, Maria. So I'm Naomi Jansson, Alan Jansson's daughter, and I'm going to ask him our 5 top questions about the root treatment. So, Alan, could you please talk to us about when does the root treatment happen in a treatment?
Firstly, I'd like to say hello to everyone. Thank you for joining us. Really good to have you aboard. A very exciting eventuality here. So the root treatment, when do we apply the root treatment? Commonly, I would say probably 98, 97% of cases, we apply the root treatment at the beginning, the very beginning, after we've commenced our diagnosis, perhaps taken the pulse and checked the symptomology of the patient, maybe abdominal diagnosis, and we've decided the fundamental, and this is the core of the root treatment, the fundamental underlying imbalance behind all of the symptomology, the one key that will unlock Pandora's box virtually in regards treatment outcomes.
Wonderful, thank you. And so you just mentioned that this, the root treatment is applied according to what pathology or diagnosis that you have developed. So could you talk to us about where does that come from?
The underlying
classical.
Yes, I understand the question. The underlying source or theory espoused in regards to the root treatment is in the Nan Jing, which is a classical Chinese text written a number of thousands of years ago. And it has chapters dealing with difficult issues. It's called the Classic of Difficult Issues. And there are a number of chapters that deal with different approaches to treatment and other sundry topics. The 69th chapter, which is the key chapter in regards to the administration of the root treatment, is about what we call the generating cycle. Some of you may have learned about it at college. It's called the Shen cycle or the nourishing cycle. This is an extremely relevant and important basis or fundamental understanding for us to have, and it unlocks virtually, as I said before, Pandora's box in regards how we understand how the body works, how the meridians and the organs or the zung fu interact with each other. So the zung interacting with the zung, all of this has a cohesive band, and that cohesive band is encapsulated in regards to treatment in the 69th chapter of the Nan Jing.
Thank you. Could you talk a little bit more, expand a little bit more on that 69th chapter and is it the elements that come into play? The 5 elements. Is that the Shen cycle that you're talking about?
It is definitely the 5 elements, and at a very rudimentary level, we can just take it very plainly as the 5 elements. We've got the wood, it nourishes the fire, fire nourishes earth, earth nourishes the metal, metal nourishes and holds the water, and the water feeds the wood. So this is a cycle that was developed from a macrocosmic perspective. Ancient Chinese medicine evolved as a result of observing the macrocosm, observing nature and how nature interacted and what substance or what aspect of life nourished the next aspect. So this is the fundamental evolution. And then that understanding of the macrocosmic, or the natural aspect, or the observation of how nature works, was applied in a microcosmic perspective to us as human beings. So the understanding of that we are part of nature, and we still function under the umbrella of nature. No matter how much we kid ourselves that we're independent of, it just takes a few little paddywhacks here and there, perhaps like the current scenario we're undergoing, or when a tsunami strikes or an earthquake, to understand that nature is all powerful. And the deeper understanding from my perspective clinically that I have on how I can apply this fundamental five elemental Shen or nourishing cycle to treatments and to the physiology and pathophysiology of my patients, it just adds an enormous amount of potency to the treatment.
And so what you're saying there is that this is not just an understanding of physiology, you're actually using this theory to select the points to administer the treatment and correct what your diagnosis is.
Absolutely. All of these points are located in the meridians below the knee or the elbow. They're called the command points for a reason. The way in which we use them can contribute hugely to the potency and the positive outcome of the treatment. So, for example, if through our diagnostic process, or fundamentally from a traditional, I could say Japanese, but it's not, from a classical perspective, traditional Chinese/Japanese perspective, we have four fundamental aspects of our being that are subject to depletion before we die. So we have liver deficiency, spleen deficiency, kidney deficiency, and lung deficiency. So the four zang, these are the key elements that become imbalanced and cause a chain reaction of responses throughout the body that can become any type of symptomology depending on what that fundamental imbalance is. So initially we will deal with what we call the when the fluids or there's yin deficiency of these fundamental organs, or these four fundamental zang organs: the liver, the spleen, the kidney, and the lung. So if we were to utilize the 69th chapter, select the points to apply for someone with diagnosis suffering from liver deficiency, then we would use the mother element of wood on that meridian. So that would be, the mother element of wood is water. And we therefore use the water point on the water meridian, kidney 10. We would also, in conjunction with using the water point on the water meridian, we would be also utilizing the water point on the wood meridian, liver 8. So using the 69th chapter, our fundamental treatment for liver deficiency, yin deficiency syndrome, is kidney 10, which is the supportive or nourishing meridian, and liver 8, which is the supporting or nourishing point, water point on the liver meridian. So if you get it's like a double shot long black. It's like we get a double water shot, and the water points are amazing. I go for a long time into the different characteristics of the water points, but because they're water points, then automatically we would be thinking along lines of cooling and some contracting and fluids and that nature. That's the nature of the points. So we tending to use those water points, especially in liver deficiency, to nourish the yin and the jin yang and help control any relatively excess amount of yang energy that is appearing in the body and manifesting as specific symptoms. So that's the liver deficiency. So we're using the water points. Now, if we move to spleen deficiency or the earth meridian, again, we should all have a basic grasp, but the earth meridian, it's the core. It's the nutritive. It's a key power plant for building the nutritive key and subsidizing the wei key. Very, very important function. So if we were to use the 69th chapter or the classic theory to tonify the spleen meridian, then we would select the preceding or the nourishing or the mother point. Now, we rarely use the heart meridian in classical acupuncture, and we'll talk more about that down the track. But at the moment, please accept that we substitute the pericardium meridian in this instance for tonifying or strengthening the spleen zang and the spleen meridian. So when I mention the name, please understand I'm talking about the meridian and the organ at the same time, not as separate entities at this point. So when I mention the spleen, I'm talking about we promote the spleen meridian, but we will also, as a result, and as a consequence of doing that, we're promoting the function of the spleen organ, the zang. So if we were to use the mother point, we would use pericardium 8, the fire point on the spleen meridian. Very interesting point to needle. Again, a little bit down the track, we'll go into how to needle pericardium 8. But just to stay on topic, today, we'll just focus on the fact that we're going to use the fire point on the pericardium meridian with the fire point on the spleen meridian. So spleen 2, which is this second of the command points back from spleen 1. Obviously, again, it's a very interesting and a very challenging point to needle appropriately. So it's just not like you just bung a needle in there and it's going to be great, but just to consolidate that when, and we would use this combination of points perhaps in the incident of someone with an acute fever or someone that's come down and suffering some sort of exogenous pathogenic invasion that's gone a little deep, maybe affecting the tummy, but mainly when someone has a fever. I'll explain the logic behind that later, but if you could accept at the moment, we would be looking at using pericardium 8, spleen 2 in dealing with spleen deficiency, especially when there is fever present from the pathogenic invasion from external sources. So liver, wood element, use the water points. Spleen, the earth element, we use the fire points. And the next element that we'll deal with is the kidney, and when an organ, the meridian, the element, all one part of the same package with slightly different perspectives. So the kidney, organ, meridian, the mother element of water is metal. So as we've done previously in the liver and the spleen, we'll utilize the mother point on the mother meridian. So that would be the metal point on the metal meridian, or lung 8 as the metal point on the metal meridian, and we would use that in conjunction with, and again I'll explain how we will use it at another time, but at the moment the metal point on water meridian or the kidney meridian is kidney 7. So utilizing the 69th chapter, we're again applying and asking the mother to nourish the child, both from the perspective of the mother meridian organ complex and from the actual, the issue we're dealing with the child, in this case is the kidney meridian. So that's 3 of the 4 key cornerstones of the root treatment of recalibrating our patients so that we get the maximum treatment efficacy in each and every occasion. The last, but certainly not the least element we'll deal with is the metal element. And the metal element in this issue, where we're looking at treating the zung, we're looking at treating the Tai Yin meridian, we're talking about the lung organ, lung meridian complex. So if we were to apply again the 5-element principle, and we looked at the mother element of metal, which is earth, when we're wanting to tonify the lung meridian, lung organ, then we would look at utilizing the earth point on the lung meridian, lung 9, yuan source point. So obviously very powerful in tonifying the lung, because it has a number of different factors that are contributing to the building and the strengthening of the lung meridian and organ, and the earth point of the earth meridian. And again, a yuan source point, spleen 3. So spleen 3, probably a little easier to needle than spleen 2 painlessly, but nevertheless, it requires some skill. And a little bit down the track, we'll go into the skills, the needling skills. Just at the moment, I would really like to focus on just these fundamentals of understanding. And from my clinical perspective, I was challenged for the first 13 years of my career. I taught just using point indications and functions. I treated just using point indications and functions. It wasn't until that I made a decision to challenge myself and embrace this whole new world of 5 elements and different styles of needling and Tonetsky Moxibustion that I started to understand, my God, for 13 years, I've missed out on all this. And I've spent the last, basically the last 25 years catching up and understanding, my God, this medicine is amazing. And it has a third dimension to it, and it takes on life. When we look at our lineage and we hook into the lineage and start to understand the descriptions in the classics, especially in this case, to the application of the root treatment, it added a whole different dimension to my practice and to, most importantly, to my treatment outcomes. My patients, certainly as a whole, usually pretty happy when they leave, because one of the key factors when we apply the appropriate treatment, especially root treatment wise, is that the patient, our client, most importantly, will leave the clinic feeling better. And that is key. This is the key to whether we've had or able to achieve a successful clinical outcome. You know, to some degree, yes, the pulse has changed, there's no tightness in the abdomen or whatever. None of it means anything unless the patient actually gives you the tip, gee, I feel a lot better. And so it's not just the root treatment, but if we combine the root treatment, for mine, I guess maybe 60–70% of the potency of the treatment outcome is I contributed to the root treatment. That is based on my last 25 years of clinical practice.
So what you're saying is that through the root treatment, you're able to, through treating the physiology that you've diagnosed as being deficient or out of balance, you're actually resolving symptomology in the patient during the treatment.
Absolutely. And
could you give an example, a clinical example of something that's happened for a client that you've treated?
Okay, I had a patient come in with lower back pain last Friday. This patient is, I diagnosed this patient as kidney deficient, a young fellow, but crazy. He was into everything, all sports, lifting weights, playing rugby, bash, just flogged his body senseless. And he was a Polynesian descent, so darker skin. And there were certain other indications, I won't go into them in great depth, that indicated to me, plus symptomologically, he presented as a kidney deficiency with the lower back pain. So to resolve his condition, I treated lung 8, middle point of the kidney, and middle point of the lung meridian, and kidney 7, the middle point of the water meridian, tonified that, and then I adjusted the, we'll get into this again a little bit later, I adjusted the bladder meridian as a result, because with the lower back pain, there's going to be some degree of imbalance in the bladder meridian because it's so intimately related to the kidney function, to the kidney meridian. I then applied the back shoe treatment, which is what we call the branch treatment. But it complements that addressing that fundamental deficiency. I'm pleased to say that the young lad who was bent over in a lot of pain upon arrival left the clinic feeling, well, I won't say 100%, but certainly 90% better. He was moving a lot more freely. There's a lot more to it than that, but again.
So you were using this theory from the classics for an acute presentation of back pain. So understanding an underlying physiology to treat a seemingly musculoskeletal condition.
Yeah, the musculoskeletal problem is there as a result of an imbalance. And if we were to apply the classical theories as espoused in the texts written some thousands of years ago, including the Ling Shu, the Nan Jing, the Shan Han Lun, and if we start to study and understand, we realize that the symptoms are all a result of, and if we utilize our classical or traditional theoretical understandings, then underlying each and every symptom that we experience or that the patient experiences is a fundamental imbalance that, when corrected appropriately in clinical practice, as I said before, and I bang on about it, I know the treatment outcomes are exponentially improved. That was definitely been my experience. It also draws us into the lineage. And certainly for me, I've started to feel like I'm part of a lineage. I'm no longer some big head gaijin with little hair doing something from the outside. I'm a part of this whole process. It's almost like there's a extensionless connection as a result of this energetic communication through the ages that's transported through these books. I mean, I'm not particularly religious, and I'm not saying it is a religion, but in reading the ancient text, the Quran or the Bible, the Bhagavad Gita, all of that carries some weight because of the traditions involved. And this traditional medicine is that, in the sense it carries the weight of thousands of years experience with it, and it's become a part of my clinical practice. It's a part of my teaching. It's a part of my life, and it takes the practice of acupuncture from being technological to multi-dimensional. It becomes a three-dimensional practice. We embrace the patient as part of nature, and we accept that the patient reflects nature, and as we do. So the flow of the treatment is, it's more artistic, more poetic, but in that there's a creative force that's unleashed, that's not unleashed when we just approach the patient as a bunch of symptoms and stick the needles in according to the symptoms.
Really inspiring. Thank you for breaking that down. And I think there'll be one question that a few people will have unresolved. So I'm going to ask that question. You did mention about using the pericardium meridian instead of the heart meridian, but some people may have noticed that the heart organ wasn't listed in the examples for the 69th. Could you just briefly explain why that wasn't listed?
From the classical perspective, and I think regardless of, we have an understanding of the heart is the emperor, the most precious. And we know that there's the generals and there's the guardians, and because the ancients recognized that the heart, when the heart went, so did we. So in that regard, the understanding was if there was a significant imbalance in the heart meridian, then the patient would die. So to deal with imbalances in the heart or the heart meridian, because the pericardium, they obviously had an understanding the pericardium aligns the heart. So they felt that the emperor needs to be protected at all costs and shouldn't be manipulated randomly. It should be always protected. So to use the pericardium or the ministerial fire to as like a control of the yang qi from the heart, and how much we send where, and how we control the amount of yang qi in the upper jiao, and how we can actually send that down to strengthen the Ming Men and bolster our digestion and the function of the spleen and stomach and the dissemination of fluids by the kidney. This is all related. This is the interaction between the pericardium and the heart. If we, like, there are many different perspectives to look at the medicine, but if we were to apply the classics in this instance, if the patient were heart deficient, then the patient's life was either about to end or had ended. So there are a number of ways of us strengthening. We strengthen all of the support for the heart in the understanding that if we do that, then the heart will remain in good shape. I hope I've explained that pretty well. It is I know that in TCM the heart conditions are used a lot, but from the perspective, certainly from the perspective of the practice of acupuncture, the pericardium meridian is far more functional in dealing with any imbalances of the heart. And the heart, again, unless the person is of really advanced skill levels, it's probably better to steer away from actually mucking around with the heart as a result of it being the single most precious entity in that when it goes, we leave our mortal coil. Well,
great explanation. That brings me to a close with my questions. Thank you for explaining and breaking down the 69th chapter for us.
That's my pleasure. I want to say goodbye because I know it's the weirdest of experiences, but I know there are people out there that I know well and I met over my years of traveling the world and teaching. I just want to send all my love out to you guys, and those that don't know me, that's the sort of guy I am. I can be a beast, but I've got a kind heart. They tell me that all of that kindness and love goes out to everyone at this particular juncture of history. It's very interesting times indeed, and as I tend to say in my non-denominational way, may the force be with you. Ciao.
Thank you, Alan, for sharing. Thank you, Naomi, for the very good questions. I would just like to finish the session today just saying that there's a lot of different resources you can get from the website, World Acupuncture website. So you can get the books translated from Masakazu Ikeda Sensei. It's our teacher in Japan. And you can also have access to a video of the seminar that happened in 2018 in Australia. It has CPD points, so it could also be a good option for you at this time. And you also have the website, which has, it's a website with around 15 years of age. It has more than 200 videos with Alan talking and explaining all the theoretical background, all the more practical skills. Like there's a lot of information there. You can go into worldacupuncture.com and give a look at that. And if you are interested also, Alan is also open to tutor students. So if you have questions, if you have patients that are difficult to deal with, so you can also have that option to work with Alan directly. He's very open to that. So thank you, and I think we finished the session for today.